May I now invite Ben McClennan. Many of you have participated in a link that we sent you. It's called the Strength Finders Workshop. The idea to do this session actually came partly from my own experience. I trained to become an executive coach last year. And there was one line that was said to me where it said, what you focus on grows. What you focus on grows. And I figure as I reflect on feedback and inputs that I have been given over the years, I was always told what I could improve. All of us tend to focus, culturally we are brought up to constantly try and become better at where our gaps are. I think there is a whole lot of wisdom in focusing on what our strengths are, because what you focus on grows. I felt it was a pretty seminal input and has made a big difference to the way I think about things, and therefore I thought it would be great for us to start this conference where we are looking to grow, to actually approach this with our strengths. I couldn't have found someone better to lead this workshop for us. Dr. Bennett McClennan is a business strategist, he's a writer, he's an executive coach, he works with leaders for positive change. In recent years, he has shifted his focus back to a lot of academic pursuits. But he is a Harvard MBA, he has a master's in fine arts, he's a raw food chef, he's done theater. He has a life which really has played to its strengths, as opposed to getting bogged down by the one thing that he set out to do. So I'm going to hand over to Ben, but please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you. All right, well, that was a great introduction. Actually, Pramath gave me one of the best introductions I've ever had. He said, this is Ben, he's done a lot of stuff, and he's a great lover of India. And so I said, okay, that's a good one. I'll take that one. So welcome. Before we get going, and actually let's bring the lights up just a little bit. If you have picked up your badge, but you didn't pick up the badge with your strengths on them, but you actually did it, raise your hand. So guys, could we bring the lights up so people can see? Thank you. So if the staff can get these folks, or maybe we'll figure out, because we're going to use this in the session today to help you understand what that meant and why you might care. And otherwise it was just maybe an interesting exercise, but it doesn't have a payout. So the whole point here is, these are CFOs. Where's the payout? Return on investment, right? Okay, so this is about the Strengths Finders program. Do I have the video? Or do I have the... Let me get the PowerPoint up. Manoj, who was greeted me, is from GE Capital. Manoj, you're somewhere out here. There you are. Thank you. Asked the question, why are we doing this? And the answer I hope you'll find in the process of doing it. But the theme here is from strength to stronger to strongest. And actually, when you were giving your one-word responses, I said, oh, this is good to great. And one person said, energized. So I like those ideas of good to great and energized, because they have this kind of upward feeling, this movement forward, this sense of we can. And I think a lot of all of us, and I include us, those of us that are not from India, but are in India, those that are outside India, there's a sense in the world that things could change for the better, and that we're at a moment in time that's really important. So the thought here in terms of strong, stronger, and strongest is that oftentimes we don't really focus on our strengths. We focus on our weaknesses. And the book here that you see, the Tom Rath book, Strengths Finder, is a refocusing of our thinking, or an attempt to refocus our thinking. Started out by Dr. Donald Clifton. And Clifton was a psychologist, along with Martin Seligman, who said all of psychology is about sick people. It's all Freud and Jung and people who are saying there's something wrong with you. And instead of thinking of the brain as always an object of being something wrong, let's think of the opposite. Let's think of the brain as being the location of something right. And so these psychologists created what's now called the field of positive psychology. Now, positive psychology doesn't mean I'm sick in the head. Are you sure? That would be a positive response, right? No. It means that in most of the psychology in the past, it focused on what they call negative affect, negative emotions. But the positive psychologists discovered people can have both negative affect and positive affect at the same time. And the easy way to think of this is you can be upset about something and still happy about other things simultaneously. So what they've discovered is the human isn't just one thing. They're not a neurosis, they're not a psychosis, and they're not just perpetually happy. They can be both. And so these psychologists said, let's focus on the strengths because those are what make life worth living. Does that sound good? That makes sense? So maybe, I don't know if I can pull that, but like, would you like to know what makes life worth living? Take your poll, punch it in. Yes, no, affirmative, I don't know, whatever it is. Let's try the polling. We'll get a sense of the sense of positivity already here. So Clifton developed with a group of researchers a set of metrics, and that's basically the Strengths Finder that you took. The earliest one was called Strengths Finder, actually had a different name. They've revised it over literally hundreds of thousands, if not at this point millions of people who have taken this test. It's not really a test, it's a self-assessment, right? So you can cheat on it if you want, you can game it if you like, you understand what I'm talking about, right? You can put a spin, but if you just answer the questions, what it will give you is an indication of your actual natural talents, the things that left on your own you would pursue. And that's really what the strengths are. And the thought here is, if you understand those, as Roddy was suggesting, that you will focus on those more than you focus on your negatives. Now, a lot of what I understand in school, because I'm also a professor and I teach in 3 different locations in the world, a lot of what we focus on in school, what people didn't get right. And I always say, that's just the wrong way. Because in the theater and in film and in television, you try to focus on catching people doing the right things and then reinforcing that. Because the more you focus on the things that don't work, the more those people are going to do those things. Does anybody have that experience? You beat up on somebody over and over and they're still doing it. Why? Because you're focusing their attention on it. So if you focus your attention on their strengths, on the behaviors that you want to see them deliver, you're much more likely to get that. Now, somebody says, wait a second. How will they know what they're doing wrong if all we talk about is their strengths? Catch them doing things right, because humans have a wide range of behaviors. Now, if they're doing something really wrong, you say, don't do that. Do this. And every time they do this, you say, great, terrific, good job. I sometimes do corporate training here, and I find it's kind of difficult oftentimes for people in some cultures to say, great, that was just terrific. And I know that in the West, Americans are considered way more emotive, right? We're just out there all the time, throwing our emotions out. But you look at Bollywood, that's a lot of emotions too. So it's not just Hollywood, it's Bollywood. All human beings have the ability to have a wide range of behaviors. And it's really what you choose to focus on, what you choose to emphasize. But know this, if you repeatedly deal with the things people aren't good at, they will repeatedly give you those things. And if you start working on trying to get people to do the things that they could be good at, they will give you more of those things. Now, how does that help your company? Your company isn't going to grow based on a bunch of weaknesses. It's going to grow based on strength. So one of my other areas is strategy. Strategy is about being different. And tomorrow we're going to talk communications about things that help you stand out, stand up, step up. Do things so that you're out there with your strengths. Leading from strength is the way to go forward. Now, that's the philosophy. The test actually comes up with, and there's 34 talent categories. These aren't necessarily comprehensive. You could think of them as kind of summaries. So you could say, well, there's a little talent in here I don't see it in the list. And that may be true. What the creators of the program were trying to do was create enough to give a sense of the wide range of human behavior, of talents, of skills and strengths you could develop, and at the same time make them manageable. So to have 2 or 3 wouldn't give us the full range, and to have 200 or 300 would just get kind of confusing. So this is a compromise, as many things are. It's trying to summarize, but if you look at the descriptions of each of the strengths, what you're going to discover is that most of the things you could think about are there. Now I'm going to do a quick check here. Have everybody gotten their cards, their strengths? Who still doesn't have it? Anybody doesn't have it? Okay, so we can go on. So on your card, you have 5 strengths, right? And they're going to be one of these 34 strengths. You have 5 strengths. And on your tables, you have a folder handout. So if you could find that, it looks like this. And in there, it has descriptions of the 34 strengths. The descriptions contain, and we'll get to this a bit later, the high level of what it looks like when it really works for you. And the basement is when it really doesn't work for you, it works against you. So you've heard, I'm sure, the saying that sometimes your greatest strengths are also your greatest weaknesses. So this assessment also recognizes that. Anyway, we're going to do an introduction to our strengths. And here's going to be the way it works. We're going to bring up the lights in a minute. We're going to have people talk about their strengths to everybody else in the room. So for example, when I take the Strength Finders test, which I did, this was in the end of about 2013, I believe. So it said my top strengths are strategic, futuristic, developer, connectedness, and learner. Does that mean I'm non-analytical? Folks, I went to the Harvard Business School. I'm a Baker Scholar. I joined McKinsey & Company. I was there for 6 years. You don't think I can do analysis? But it's not one of the things that I really find I enjoy, right? So I have enough intelligence, which all of you do, to pull off stuff you might not like. But it doesn't mean it plays to your strengths. Whereas strategic, in this case, and this is where you need to read the descriptions a little bit, and why we're going to give you a chance to talk them out with your peers. Strategic doesn't mean like I think and act decisively. In this case, what it means is I like to think a lot about the possibilities. So I mull things over. I work through all of the possibilities of outcomes. It doesn't mean I act. So in fact, one of the things that a strategic person needs is something called activator. And an activator is the kind of person who just can't wait to get something done, regardless of what it is. So they're more of the shoot, ready, aim person. So between somebody who mulls things out and somebody who's ready to shoot, ready, aim, you can have a pretty good team. And many times you find that at the top of corporations, right? So a good chief strategic officer is going to be one that doesn't act necessarily, but wants to think through. And then a good COO or CEO to complement that would be somebody that really wants to push things through. Or you could have teams that we were talking about as well. The CFO might have that sense of analysis, or they might have that sense of let's go get it done, or they might have, so it's all about complementing your skills and your strengths with the appropriate team members. And if you can do that, then you're going to find that your strengths aren't only going to come out strong for you, but they'll also add to your team and add to your company. Futuristic is the second one in mind. That means I like thinking about possibilities that could evolve in the future. It kind of sits with strategic. Developer is a little bit less clear. What does that mean? Do I do real estate? No. What it means is that I like working and helping people come along. So you'd find me teaching, surprise. I'm a vice dean, a professor, associate dean, a coach, a trainer. So yeah, okay, I buy that. I'm a developer. Now, the developer's greatest problem potentially would be that they want to help everybody. Well, the world is too full of people. You can't do that. So a potential downside to being a strong developer would be that you'd want to help too many people. You spread yourself too thin, you become ineffective. Connectedness isn't necessarily about like networking. Connectedness is you see the dots. And my colleague Kim Perkins, with whom I developed a program called Total Question Workout, we'll talk about that a little bit tomorrow. She's a positive psychologist, a 3-time national champion in the longest skating race in the world, 67 miles. Kim says, you know, we work really well together because I'm like, there's a painting. Ooh, there's colors, there's spotches, there's this, there's that. He says, when you look at the painting, you go, there's a dot missing. So connectedness is about pulling together the picture, the dots, whatever that might be. And learner is just exactly what it sounds like. So here's the way the exercise works. We're going to bring up the lights in a moment. We'll have everybody get up. We want you to make sure you're reading your card. You'll introduce yourself to somebody else in the room. And you'll just introduce yourself as one strength. So I'll say, for example, hi, I'm Ben. I'm strategic. And I'm good at thinking through the problem all the way through. And the person that I introduce myself to will go, hi, I'm Bob. I could use that, and here's how. You got it? So it's kind of a role play. And so Bob, who's not here on the stage, but pretending, when you tell your strength, that person is going to say, I could use that. And so you think about how you could. Everybody get this? Clear? So we're going to try this down here if we got it clear enough. So let's just, can I use the two of you? Why not? Can I use you? No? Yes? Okay. Come on. Okay, so do you have your cards? You've got something here. Your strength. Do you have a strength card? Oh, you got it on your list? Okay. So bring your list. Or maybe, do you have one? Okay, why don't we jump? Sorry, didn't mean to jump on in. Okay, bring the lights up a little, please. Okay, so you will introduce yourselves here. And Rajiv, you're going to introduce yourself to him. But you're going to introduce yourself, just your name and your strength, and describe what the strength is, the first one. I'm Rajiv, he says. And I am strategic. Okay. And that means? I think through and I look at. Put the whole plan together. Okay. Now, that's Rajiv. And your response is? Yep. Shaker, good. Okay, hang on. So your role here isn't to tell what you do first. It's to say, yeah, we could get the mic. It's to say, I could use that. Right? Now, what are we doing? We're reinforcing the positivity of the fact that he's got a strength. You're going to say, great, I could use that. And then give him an example off the top of your head how you might use it. Then you switch roles. Okay? So we're going to do this in 5-minute rounds. Everybody's going to get to introduce one strength per round. One strength per round. And at the end of the round, I'm going to hit a doorbell and you're going to hear ba 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 ba, you know. And so that's the signal to change. Instead of me going, okay, everybody move around. Come on, stop talking, move around. No, I'm not going to do that. Why? Because I'd look silly. Plus my voice will go out before the end of the afternoon. And I have to have some more talk with you tomorrow. So we're going to use the doorbell. Good? Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's go for it. Everybody up. Here's the conversation. I could use that. First person is, what's the idea? And then I could use that, all right? Then you switch roles after you've had the discussion. So if you want to bring around the sheet that shows what each of those, thank you. If you want to bring that with you, then you can refer to it, all right? So this is to get you used to it and also get everybody acquainted with the different kind of strengths. And then we'll come back and go for that. Okay, so everybody up. Everybody up. Now this is you got to get up. Now there's another trick here, folks. And that is when people are on their feet, their blood is working better, their oxygen is coming to the brain, and you're thinking more. So if you want to energize your meetings, get people off their bottoms and on the bottoms of their feet up. All right? Now, the second thing is, when the bell goes, go to some part of the room you haven't been to. Don't just turn around in your little circles. Just get you out of your area of comfort, right? Go to some other part of the room, meet somebody you've never met before, and just really enjoy it. Okay, go for it. First round. I can't hear you. Right. Okay, so Radhika has just suggested if anybody has doubts, wave your hands, and one of us will come around. One of us will come around to help you. He has not taken the video. around. This time, move as far across the room as you possibly can. I notice a lot of people are just standing where they started. So move as far across the room as you can. All right, so everybody got that direction? So if you've been standing here all day, move to another room. And if you've been in the back, come to the front. If you've been on the left side, go to the right. If you've been on the right, go to the left. And if you're sitting down, you got to get up. Now there will be tea later, there'll be time to talk. Lights up, lights down, lights up, lights down, lights up, lights down, lights up, lights down, lights up. All right, we got that. So that's the signal to everybody find a seat. Now you don't have to find your original seat, lights up. You don't have to find your original seat, just find a seat. With some people, we're going to have some more discussion. Now, can we do a poll? Is that a possibility to catch on this? To do a poll? So let me suggest the poll sounds like this. One thing that you got out of this exercise. One thing. It's going to be a couple words probably. One thing that you got out of this exercise about thinking about strengths both as potentially a real strong positive, but also potentially something that might hold you back if they're overused. Okay? So everybody's got your smartphones or pads or whatever. And maybe we can get the polling up here. So give me a tweet on what you learned. What one or two things might have you learned? Can we show this? What? Oh, they're preset. They're not automatic? Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. Okay, then we'll do it this way. Shout it out. It's not that big of a room. Anything someone learned here? One or two things? Anyone? Yes? Now, you're going to have to stand up to project your voice a little bit. Okay. A balcony and a basement. So he's accepting the idea. You can see that that's a real thing. Great. Anything over here? I'm just going to kind of wave the room this way. Someone? Yes, back here.
I think one thing is that you realize every weakness has a strength as well.
Ah, that's a way of turning it around. I suppose every strength... Yeah,
so if you think somebody's, that person is a blubbermouth, well, they're actually a good communicator.
Could be a terrific PR person. Yeah. So, in fact, things that you might characterize as a weakness, in the right situation, could in fact be a strength. Great. Over here, somewhere. Yes.
Main strength is the basement.
The what?
Why?
Why?
Because in my case, the main strength is responsibility.
Yeah.
And when I evaluate the basement portion, there means I take on more burden on myself.
More burden than you ought to.
So then I cannot devote more time to the other
right.
activities.
So that strength actually starts holding you back because it limits your ability to exercise your other strengths. And potentially, with responsibility, it limits the way you might be delegating and developing others. So there are a couple of drawbacks to taking it all on yourself. Other than you have to work 24/7, which you do anyway, right? Okay. Over here, somewhere. Something you learned. Somewhere here.
What we realized is that we may have top 5 strengths, but we have aspects of the others as well, some part of it.
Yeah. Every human being, which we talked about, this isn't you either don't have it or you do. It's a spectrum. It's what you lead with, right? So I have an arm muscle. I can tell you one thing. I can't hit a ball and I can't pitch it. You know, I've never been a sports person, but yes, I have a muscle, right? And it's great because it still feeds me. I walk around, I do this sort of thing. I can type. So we all have elements of this. The question is, what are we naturally more talented at doing? And to find, we play more to those. One gentleman asked me, I've got these strengths, I'm feeling like I should be using some of them. I say, your natural inclination, particularly as you get a little older, we're talking about people in the area of 40 to 50. You're going to start saying to yourselves, maybe unconscious, I don't know, I feel a little bit discontent. That's an indicator that you're not using all your strengths or all your aptitudes. That's an indicator, right? There might be other reasons. But if there's not a real specific reason, oftentimes it's because we're not using things that we really would be good at. And really becoming a completely, fully realized human being involves using all of those. Okay, something anybody learned over here? Gentleman back there.
Yeah, in a practical situation in day-to-day organization, you require all sorts of strength to exhibit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good point. Okay, so sounds like useful exercise. Let me go on and talk about one other way of doing strengths. And this is you didn't take this, but if you're interested in this idea, I would recommend taking the next step. And this is called Realize 2. It's a slightly different take on strengths. Gentleman back here said, which one's the best? And I said, well, it's a spectrum. It's kind of hard to tell, though. You've got 5 in the top. But below the 5 that are reported, there are another 5. Right? And those would be the 10, and below those are another 5. So the question is really, what do you do with this information? And so another group has put together this program called Realize 2. You can Google it, and you will find it, Realize 2. You can take the test. It's enormously inexpensive. I don't have any participation in it. I'm not selling it. I don't get a percentage. I'm just saying it's a good one because it takes you to that next level of saying, not only what am I good at, but what am I using? And what am I potentially good at that I'm not using? That's the second quadrant. And the third is, what have I learned to do, but I really probably shouldn't do a lot of it. So my example was, I'm really good at mathematical analysis, but believe me, it's a hard thing to do. And then the fourth quadrant is things that you're doing, but that you're probably not good at, and you shouldn't be doing, which means somebody else should be doing it, or you ought to find a job that somehow get that off your plate. Because if you find yourself in that lower quadrant that talks about weaknesses, and a lot of your daily activities are spent on that, you are going to be an unhappy and less than fully productive person. And since we're talking about strong, stronger, strongest, that's not the formula for getting there. If your companies are doing things that they're not particularly good at, and you keep forcing it to go, you're going to be less competitive than other companies, right, that work on their strengths because they're differentiating on strength and you're focusing on making up. So you got to play to your strengths in all areas. Now, on your tables, there's a worksheet from the Strengths Finders test called Food for Thought. And on that are the 4 quadrants here. This is my 4 quadrants and realized doesn't really matter much. Adherence, I'm pretty good at forcing myself to get done on time. Competitive, I could care less if you win. I really could, because I got too many things to do in my life other than worry about you. My colleague, Kim Perkins, is a national competitive skater. Where do you think her competitiveness strength is? It's right up there in the realized strength column. So we're quite different. So just because you have a strength, you got to figure out, are you using it? So if you want to take a moment here, or we can, I think we're out of time, right, Roddy? We're close? Okay. So what I would suggest as we close here is to take a moment, think about what you're doing in each of these boxes, write it down, and then if you want to continue your discussion, we'll do that. We'll end the session with your analysis of what you're good at and you're doing, what you potentially are good at that you're not doing enough of, what you're doing that you've learned and that you really should minimize to the extent you should, and what you might be doing that isn't playing to any of your strengths, and you need to figure out a way to move it on to somebody else, or just stop doing it. Now, why would you want to stop doing something that you're already doing? And I think the best answer was probably supplied by Peter Drucker. And I know he was quoting some ancient sage, but he said, in order to do something new, you have to stop doing something old. In order to do something new, you have to stop doing something old. Now, my recommendation for the things that you stop doing are the things you aren't very good at and you don't like anyway. And that frees you up to do new things. If you want to take on a new job, if you want to transition your role, if you want to start a new company, you've got to stop doing something, because we can't just keep piling things on our plate. Okay, so take a moment, think about yourselves, write those down, and over the weekend you might just sort of start noodling on, noodling is a phrase, you might just start considering how you might move out of the quadrants that are below that line, and particularly into that quadrant that says things I could do well, but I don't do. Because those are the ones that you really need to develop to become fully happy with the talents and the skills and the aptitudes you have. So, questions. Anybody have a question written down? We'll hold it up. We'll bring it up. Question? Anybody got a question? We got all the answers. That's even better. Okay, I'll be around. I'll be around tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll talk about communication skills, particularly communication skills in pressured situations, which I think all of you probably are experiencing or will experience at some point in the near future. It's almost inevitable these days. And if there are no other questions, I'd say thank you very much. The one thing I would urge you to do is fill out the forms, help yourself, think of your strengths, build on your strengths so you can go from stronger to the strongest. And did you have fun? Did you have fun? Yeah. Okay. This is the most fun I've ever had with a group of CFOs. By the way, you're the most demonstrative group ever of CFOs too. It's like, I appreciate that energy. Thank you.